I think it's time for some self-evaluation, for a little recursion in the usual equation that gets spit out onto YouTube. It's time to look at the medium instead of the message. Self-analysis. Let's turn the camera on ourselves. All of us on YouTube. Let's ask what it is that we're doing here. In other words, not what we're all saying, not what the general trend of our message is, but what does it mean that we're here to begin with? What does this activity do to the consciousness of the maker of the film and to the consciousness of the watcher? And how does that change in the consciousness of the participants affect the society at large? And to do this, to self-analyze, we have to talk about the ego, because that is the thinking mind, the mind that observes itself. That's what the ego does. You know, but as soon as we use this word ego, we have to unavoidably make distinctions, because it's used in a variety of ways. We could be talking about the Cartesian ego, the more philosophical ego that analyzes its experience, you know, and writes huge, thick books about it, about single concepts. This whole book is about two things. The first half's about thinking, and the last half is about the will. That's it. About 250 pages on each of those two words. So that's what philosophers do. They break things down. So there's a philosophical ego, a discursive mind. And then there's the ego that we identify with, the one that feels our pains, the one that has our thoughts, the one that makes our decisions, the one that experiences our lives, the I. So there's the life ego, that sense of separateness and identity that we form in relationship to other people. And then there's the philosophical ego, which is just a disinterested, you know, objective mind that can so abstract from its actual experience as a living being and a living ego, and somehow gain access to universal ideas that are the same no matter who you are or where you are or what time it is. You know, mathematics is a good example of that, but logic is as well. So there's two kinds of ego, but both of them have something in common, and that's that they are always, both of them, in duality. The living ego, the ego that is our identity, that carries the weight of our experience, that ego exists in opposition to others. And to have other egos out there, you have to objectify people, and that's what the ego does. It objectifies the world and objectifies things within the world by creating a contrast between itself and those things. The philosophical ego is also always in some kind of a duality, in that it's an I that thinks. It's not just a thought or an I. It's always an I with an idea. A spectator with a spectacle, an audience with an actor or a stage. When we try to examine ourselves, we're creating a problem. Asking a question is creating a problem. In the world itself, no problems could really exist. The world itself must be doing what it's doing. You can't define any mistakes, because it's just what it's doing. There's no judge of a mistake. I mean, it depends what perspective you take, you know. evolution can take one fork in the road that's good for some species living in that ecosystem and bad for others. And so it creates opportunities for some and death and destruction for others. You can't avoid that, but there's no outside perspective to say that this is good, this is bad. Except there appears to be that's the ego. That's the one that steps outside and draws a line in the sand and says, you're with me or you're against me. And it can do this, in simple ways, and it can also do it in more elaborate ways. It could do it in 250 pages. It can draw a line in the sand between, what thinking is and what it isn't. What anything is and what it isn't. Identities are always derived through differences. So it would appear that differences, therefore, are more primordial. They come before identity. They give rise to identity. Or at least that's how it is for the ego, whether it's the philosophical or the living. So here on YouTube, no matter what kind of videos we're making, the ego is on display. Philosophical ego, living ego, all kinds of egos are on display because that's what this is. It's a videotaping of oneself and a watching by others. The self and the other. Always they're in relationship, And so what is the answer to that question I asked earlier about how YouTube is affecting the culture at large? Because, if you listen, everybody's saying we're a hyper-individualized society, meaning people are growing increasingly alienated from one another. Is YouTube an expression of a positive example of that, or a negative? Is YouTube a confirmation of the alienation, or is it some type of transcendent act of intersubjective compassion to really reach out and try to communicate, not with one or two other people, but with the world, with everybody? Is YouTube a bunch of lonely people, trying to find someone to talk to? Or is it a bunch of people trying to realize a real sense of community? Not the community of, those who are immediately around us, those people too, but also everybody else. We're trying to develop planetary consciousness. So we're talking more than just your family consciousness, your sense of togetherness with the people you live with and people who you grew up with, but not even your national consciousness, the people that you happen to have formed this governmental system with, but your entire ecosystem's consciousness. Not even just every person, human being, Homo sapien, but every living creature. And in fact, even the material world, the mineral and the rocks, even they are due some of our respect and our worship and our awe. Then that's when you're aware of the consciousness of the planet, and that's what we're trying to do, I think. There's that ego again. It's all ego, though. It's going on right now. And the ego is the sense that that activity has a culmination somewhere. Whether it's in here and in there, or what's in there and in your eyes, wherever we think the culmination is, we assume that there is one, or two, or however many people are watching this. But, you know, maybe there's not a culmination. Maybe it's just an endless reflection, or not even reflection, because there's no mirror, there's no surface upon which activity takes place. There's just continual activity. Lots of talking is going on, but no one is saying anything. It's a communal activity, this meaning-making thing that we're doing. Basic question or summation of this video is this: is YouTube the Noosphere, or is it narcissism? That's the question. Is YouTube about the ego, or is it about Eros finally reaching the omega point, you know, transforming into agape?